Hi, today we're going to do the rest of the factoring. The other day we did factoring simple quadratics. Simple quadratics are the ones where the a value is equal to 1. And we talked about how we were looking for numbers that multiplied together to get the c, and then either added or subtracted to get the b. And that would be our factoring. Today we're going to do the problems where a does not equal 1. So let's take a look at a couple of those. Again, remember you have the form ax squared plus bx plus c. If it's a solving problem, then you'll see that it equals 0. But we're just factoring today, so we won't bother with the 0. If a happens to be 1, then remember we were looking for two numbers whose product was c, meaning you took the two numbers and you multiplied them together and the answer was c. And then you either added them or subtracted them, depending upon this sign, in order to get that number right there. So if this was a plus sign, then you want to add your two numbers to get to B. If this was a minus sign, you wanted to subtract them to get to the B. Always, before you even start looking for those numbers, you double check to see if there happens to be a greatest common factor. And if there is, then you factor that number out. Today we're going to talk about what happens when the a is not equal to 1. So the process is almost the same, except there's a little step at the beginning and then a kind of reversing step at the end of the process. Other than that, it's exactly the same. So what we're going to be doing here, the little step that's at the beginning, is you are going to multiply a times c. You're going to multiply those two numbers together. That's going to be the beginning number you're going to work with. If a was equal to 1, then our beginning number we worked with was just the c. But today we're going to multiply them together, and that will give us our beginning number. Then what you're going to do is you're going to look for, just like you did before, two numbers with a product of, and the product is going to be not c like it was before, but the product is going to be whatever a times c was. So whatever that product was, you're looking for two numbers that multiply together to get to that product. And then we finish it out. And whose sum or difference, which looks just like it did the other day, sum or difference is b. So once you multiply the a number times the c number, then you look at all of the combinations of numbers that will give you that same answer, and then you're either going to add them or subtract them, and you're going to get the b number. Once you're done with that, and you've got the numbers that you want to work with, and you've got the signs that you want in your parentheses, now we do that little reversing step. Here we multiplied by a, so in our end step, we're going to divide by a. And I'll show you in a minute what that looks like. Now, a little piece of information for you. When you're doing the division by a, there are two things to keep in mind. One, if you can actually divide evenly by that a, you have to. So you divide if you can. You don't divide if it doesn't come out even. If it doesn't come out even, you reduce it if you can. You have to reduce it if it's possible. And then we don't want our answers to have any fractions in them. So what we do is we say we slide the denominator. And again, I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But when you're when you do this division, it creates a fraction. We don't want a fraction. So what we do is we take the denominator of that fraction and we slide it. We're going to move it someplace else. And then you're finished. So this division counteracts the multiplication that we had up here. We end up with a problem that doesn't have any fractions in it. So let's take a look at an example. The first example we're going to do is a pretty simple one. And I think it might have all the steps in it that you're going to need. Some of the problems are shorter than others. So this has an A value of 10. There's nothing common, so we can't take out a greatest common factor. But because this A value is not 1, we're going to use what we call the slide technique. That's the name of the technique, which was what we did in the last step. So when you do the slide technique, you multiply the A times the C. So we're going to go 10 times 7, which is 70. Now we're going to use the 70 instead of the original C. So I'm going to look for two numbers whose product is 70. So I'm going to start with that. I want two numbers whose product is 70. So let's just write them down. Sometimes you can do them in your head, and sometimes you need to write them down. But we know that 1 and 70 will work. We know that 2 and 35 will work. We know that 5 and 14 will work. And we know that 7 and 10 will work. I think those are the only combinations. So once we have the two numbers whose product is 70, now we talk about the sum and the difference. And the sum and the difference has to be the B number. So it has to be 9. Well, if you look at this sign right here, just like before, this sign tells you whether you're going to add or subtract. Well, this is a minus sign, so we're going to subtract. So I want the two numbers that will subtract to give me 9. Well, if you look at our choices here, the only two that subtract to give you 9 are these two. So just like before, we're going to start by writing our answer, put the letters in, and the numbers that you chose were 5 and 14. So put those in. Again, you have done nothing with the positive and negative signs yet. We're not using them. The only way we're using them is right here when this told us that we were going to subtract. But that's the only thing we've done so far. Now we're going to use the signs. We said we were going to subtract. And when we finish subtracting, we want a negative 9. Well, to get a negative 9, would you go 5 minus 14, or would you go 14 minus 5? Well, 5 minus 14 gives you negative 9. So 5 minus 14. So there's our answer right now. But we have to counteract this first step that we did. We multiplied by A. That was this number right here. We have to reverse that. So we're going to divide by A. The A number is 10. And this is what the division looks like. You're going to take each one of the numbers and you're going to divide it by 10. Now, the notes that we just erased off the board said that if you can divide evenly, then you do that. Well, we can't divide either one of those evenly. 10 doesn't go into 5 evenly, and it doesn't go into 14 evenly. So we go on to the second step. If we can reduce them, we have to reduce them. Well, as I look at these, both of these can be reduced. So we're going to start by reducing both of them. 5 over 10 reduces to 1 over 2, and 14 over 10 reduces to 7 over 5. Now, we don't want the fractions. So this is what we were talking about before. We're going to slide the denominator. So here's the denominator. We're going to slide it, and we're going to slide it right there. So the problem looks like this now, 2x plus 1. We have to slide this one too, because we have a fraction and we don't want the fraction. So we slide it, and you get 5x minus 7. And there's the answer to the problem. And if you want to, there's quite a bit of math here. So if you want to verify that your answer is correct, then you use the FOIL. Because remember, when you're factoring, you're actually creating a multiplication problem. And if you remember from Algebra 1, this means first, outside, inside, last. So first, 2x times 5x. Well, 2x times 5x is 10x squared, which is what you wanted. That's what you started with. Outside is 2x times negative 7. Well, 2 times negative 7 is negative 14x. And then the I stands for inside. Inside is 1 times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. Well, if you put those together, negative 14 plus 5 is negative 9, which is what you wanted. And then the L stands for last. 1 times negative 7 is negative 7, and that's what you wanted. So you verified that your answer was correct. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try the problem 6x squared minus 4x minus 10. Well, remember, the first thing you always look for is a greatest common factor. And if you look at these, the number 6, the number 4, and the number 10 can both be divided by 2. So if there is a greatest common factor, even if you could do the problem with the slide or whatever, you have to take the greatest common factor out. So that greatest common factor is 2. So you're going to divide everything by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Don't forget to write the letters down. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, we have an A value that is not 1. That A value is 3. And so since the A is not equal to 1, we're going to use the slide. The first step in the slide process is to multiply the A number times the C number. The A number times the C number. Do not worry about the negative. So 3 times 5 is 15. So I'm looking for two numbers whose product is 15. Two numbers that multiply to get 15. Well, the only choices we have are 1 and 15, 3 and 5. Sometimes you'll have a bunch of combinations, and sometimes there'll only be a couple. Now we take a look at this. We want two numbers whose product is 15, and the other part is the sum or difference, and the sum or difference has to be the B number, which is 2. Well, if we look at this last sign is a negative. That means that I want the difference. So I want my difference to be 2. So go over here, and the only combination that we could subtract and get 2 is this one right here. So start with your answer, and this greatest common factor that we put out here, it has to be written in front. It's part of your final answer. Put the letters in, put the numbers in, and now we're going to worry about the signs. You said you were going to subtract, and when we finish subtracting, we have to get -2. Well, to get -2, do I have to go 3 minus 5 or 5 minus 3? Well, to get -2, you're going to go 3 minus 5. Now, the last thing you're going to do, because it's a slide, remember it's a slide, you have the little step at the beginning, and now you got a little step at the end. You're going to divide by A. Well, my A number is 3. Don't go back up here. This was the original A number, but you made it smaller, so you have to use this one. So I'm going to divide by 3. Now remember the note said that if you can divide evenly, you do that first. Well, this one will divide evenly. So we go ahead and divide it. 3 divided by 3 is 1. This one doesn't divide evenly. So then we look at the next step. The next step said, if you can reduce it. Well, you can't reduce 5 over 3. So the last step is you slide the denominator. So you slide that denominator and it becomes 3x minus 5. All right, one more example, and I think you should have enough to understand it. Let's try 8x squared minus 26x minus 7. First step, you look for a greatest common factor. Well, nothing goes into 8, 26, and 7. So the next thing is you're going to decide, is this a simple problem or is this a slide problem? And that's where you look right here. It's simple if there's no number there. But if there's a number there, then it's a slide problem. So this is a slide problem. And remember, the slide problem has those 2 little added steps. Something at the beginning, something at the end. So at the beginning, you're going to take the A number and you're going to multiply it by the C number. Again, do not put the negatives in. Well, 8 times 7 is 56. So I want 2 numbers whose product is 56. Well, to get 56, I could use 1 and 56. I could use 2 and 28. I could use 4 and 14. I could use 7 and 8. It goes faster if you know your multiplication tables. So we found 2 numbers whose product is 56. And then the second part, the sum or the difference is, and we want the sum or the difference to be the B number. Again, don't pay attention to the negatives. Well, we make this choice here based on this sign right here, the sign before the C. Well, that says subtract, so we want difference. So we can start our answer. You can start your answer anytime. So I want one of this pair of numbers that will subtract to get 26. Well, the only one that will subtract to get 26 is this right here. There will only be one combination that will work. If you have, if you've chosen the right answer here, there'll only be one that you circle over here. So we're going to put the numbers in. And now we put the signs in. You said you wanted to subtract. And when we subtract, we want to get a negative 26. Well, to get a negative 26, do I do 2 minus 28? Or do I do 28 minus 2? Well, you do 2 minus 28. Now we have to do that last step. We did that first one up here. Now we got to do one to match it down here. And down here, we divide by A. Up here, we multiplied by A. That was our first step, was we multiplied by A. Now we're going to divide. Well, the A number is 8. So we're just going to divide by 8 in both cases. Now, the first thing you were told was if you can divide evenly, then you have to do that. Well, 8 does not go evenly into 2. And 8 does not go evenly into 28. So we can't divide either one of them. The second step says if you can reduce them, you have to do that. Well, 2 over 8 does reduce. I can divide 2 into both of those. So I get 1 over 4. And over here, this also can reduce. I can divide both of those numbers by 4. So 28 divided by 4 is 7. 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now the last step, we don't want any fractions, so we slide the denominator. So you slide it and you get 4x plus 1. You slide this one and you get 2x minus 7. And again, you multiply the two together if you want to, using the FOIL method to make sure that you get that original problem. And there you go. That's all there is to the factoring. You have the simple kind like we had the other day. The simple kind just used this question where you wanted the product to be C and the sum or difference to be B. The slide type we did today adds these two little steps. Okay. So there are a couple of worksheets on Canvas. You need to do both of them. One of them is on simple quadratics or simple factoring. The other is on slide factoring. You should be able to do both of them now. Make sure you follow the directions. Also, when you do that, don't put any spaces in your answers because the worksheet will mark it wrong if you do. You have a couple of quizzes at the beginning of the module. You need to take those if you haven't done so already. You do not have to take the factoring quiz yet. It is not open. You won't be taking it right now. But everything before that you should do. Please take a look at the email or the message that I sent you in Canvas, and it tells you exactly what you have to have done and when the deadline is. And then the last thing is, make sure you sign up for a parent-teacher conference for next Wednesday. I'm giving extra credit to students, and then I'm getting additional extra credit if your parents are involved. So get your parents involved, and hopefully I will see you on the schedule for next Wednesday. Make sure you get in touch with me if you have any questions. Go to the Zoom if you need to. on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. If I'm on the Zoom, fine. If Mr. Macco's on the Zoom, he can answer questions also. And then also remember, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you are welcome to come in after school at 2:30 to get help in any class, not just algebra. Right? Thank you.